Hi, my name is Ngozi Okondaye, and today we'll be discussing the topic joint ownership of properties. Yes, this topic is by popular demand because a lot of persons have been asking me, so what do you think about a couple owning properties together? Okay, so I'll quickly give a disclaimer. I am not a marriage counselor, so don't expect me to be advising you whether or not as a couple it is right to own properties. No, what I'll be doing today will be to tell you the implications of owning properties together as a couple. I would also tell you the advantages and the disadvantages, and I also give you a guide on how to do it if you want to do it. So, before I go ahead, I'd like to know, I hope you had a very restful weekend and I hope your week is coming on well. So, first and foremost, any person with a legal capacity can own property in Nigeria. So, what does it entail to have legal capacity? One, you should be a human being or a legally registered entity in Nigeria. Again, for human beings, you must be above 21 years. And yes, a couple can own properties together. When a couple decide to buy properties in their name, care should be taken that their name is well spelled out in the document. For example, if Mr. Emeka Okoro and Mrs. Njideka Okoro have agreed to buy a property in their name, the best option would be that their names are spelled out in the document as Mr. Emeka Okoro and Mrs. Njideka Okoro. It will not be right to state their names as Mr. and Mrs. Okoro. When it comes to the execution of their land documents, a couple should ensure that they execute the document. When I say execution, I mean signing. So a couple should ensure that when they want to sign the document, okay, like in the example I gave, there would be a column for Mr. Emeka Okoro to sign, and there will be another column for Mrs. Njideka Okoro. Both of them will sign as the purchasers of the property. First of all, when a couple buys property together, what it means is that the husband and the wife have equal ownership over the property, and they also have equal rights to keep and to dispose the property. Secondly, when one of the parties dies, the property automatically becomes the property of the surviving party. Thirdly, neither the wife nor the husband can dispose of the property independently. So to dispose of the property, both parties must consent, even if it's a disposal as a gift or a sale. Even after the dissolution of the marriage, the property still remains a property owned jointly. So none of the parties can dispose the property without the consent of the other party. Also, the property cannot be used to settle the debt of one person. It cannot be pledged without the consent of both parties. So there will be no case of, oh, okay, so I'm owing the bank, or I want to take a loan and I want to pledge this property without the consent of my wife or without the consent of my husband. Now I'm going to digress a bit. This is why I tell investors, people who want to invest in real estate, when you want to buy properties and you discover that the property belongs to a couple, always ensure that both the husband and the wife execute the deed of assignment or any other deed of conveyance that will be given to you. Except, of course, in a situation whereby one of the parties is dead. You need to do your due diligence, because any property that is jointly owned must be jointly transferred or jointly sold. So, having listed the implication of joint ownership, I'd like to say at this point that if, as a husband or a wife, you contribute to the purchase of a property and the ownership of that property means so much to you, insist at the documentation stage that your name appears on any deed of assignment or deed of conveyance to avoid stories. This is because in the case of any dispute on the ownership, and mind you, the dispute must not necessarily come between the husband and the wife. There could actually be a dispute between the couple and third parties. So in the case of a dispute, unless the party are certain joint ownership over a property is able to show proof of either financial or material contribution to the acquisition of that property, it may be impossible to claim ownership. Another thing I need to talk about is the issue of buying property in the name of a spouse. Now, like I said, I am still not a marriage counselor, so don't ask me if it is right for you to buy property in the name of your spouse. That should be decided in love. Okay, so if a husband buys a property in the name of his wife, or vice versa, the wife buys in the name of her husband, the presumption is that the property is a gift. So in case of a dispute, unless the party claiming ownership over the property can adduce enough evidence to show that the intention was not to gift the property to the other party, that party may not be able to claim ownership of that property. So, when buying a property as a couple, always ensure that your intention in purchasing the property is clearly written. Now, I know the next question on your mind will now be, what happens in the case of a dissolution? Whether it's a dissolution of marriage or any other disagreement, the property can be partitioned and each party will take their own share of the property. Again, the property can be sold and the proceeds be divided between the parties. However, if one of the parties is not willing to sell the property, then that party can pay off the other party and become the sole owner of the property. So we've come to the end of today's discussion, and I know you learned a thing or two from today's discussion. If you have really learned a thing or two from today's discussion, I would like you to drop me a comment in the comment section. And if you have any question, probably there is something I talked about that you did not quite understand, or there is something you would like me to throw more light on, why? I'll be so delighted to hear from you and to answer your question. So drop your question in the comment section too, and I will reply you as fast as possible. So until I come your way again next week, Tuesday, my name remains Ngozi Okundaye, and do have a lovely